Hey YouTube, and thank you for watching Junkworks Garage. Well, we are on the 65 Mustang here, and we are going to do some detective work here. Few things. I can tell up in the seam here, the seam across there, that there has been some work done on this corner panel, as well as it's really dented in here, and I can see some Bondo underneath here. Quite honestly, this is painted black, so I think at one time I might have ground this out, so I'm hoping this is down to metal here. I'm not positive, but I think I ground this out and then sprayed this whole thing black, because when I bought the car and brought it home, it was all blue. Every panel on it was blue, and this is not a replacement panel. I just tend to, when I grind things down, quite honestly, I rattle can, spray paint, whatever color I have on hand, and that keeps the rust down in this garage. This garage is amazing for not causing rust to go on things. Luckily, I'm very lucky with that. But that works for me. To each their own. Most people would probably put epoxy primer on this first, but I don't deal with that. Right now I'm just kind of doing the detective work. So yet again, there's been some very poor work. The main thing is right here. Now I thought this got hit right here and somebody just did a poor body work job on it. But on the inside, now that this car has been sitting for a while, I can tell that somebody just patched over a big rust hole, because that rust hole is now kind of getting worse on the inside. You can kind of notice it, and the rust pieces are sticking out. So this whole thing is definitely going to be going away at some point and being replaced. Depending on how this looks and what I can do as far as body work on this, I may end up replacing this quarter panel. I am not honestly sure. I will have more of a quarter panel on the other side that I've already kind of started several years ago, before YouTube ever existed. But I just kind of tacked it on there to get it out of my way so I wouldn't step on it. Regardless, we're going to start stripping this down, and I don't know how entertaining this is going to be, but you'll get to see me and what I'm using to strip this down. I do believe, like I said, I think I might have at one point already stripped this down to metal and then sprayed it over, so hopefully this won't be too bad. I got 24 grit on an angle grinder here, but this is old 24 grit that was used up to some extent. So normally I wouldn't go more than about 36 grit, and that's if I'm going to put body filler over it. This whole car is going to have some sort of probably filler over it and several layers of primer, so I'm not too worried. If this seems too aggressive, I'll back off and use something else. But right now, I know I'm going to be doing body work here. I know I'm going to be doing body work here, and more than likely up here. Without further ado, and way too much already, let's go ahead and start grinding this down and do some detective work. You are responsible for your own personal protection. Alright, well, my first thought of bad body work, it's factory bad done. I think there's just some seam sealer of some sort that's kind of breaking out in here, which led me believe it was body filler, but that is metal right through there, so I'm going to quit right there. It is fine. Now, I'll be honest, it's been a while since I've done any body work or anything like that. I used to actually run a body shop out of this garage, believe it or not, quite a few years ago. Then the state shut me down, even though I could have stayed open if I basically bribed them, if I would have paid fees is what they called it. But beyond that, we'll go past that. It's been a while, we'll just put it that way. And this car is reminding me of a couple things here. How poorly they actually were done at the factory. First of all, because these are the actual seams. There's even brass right here at the edges of this seam here. The seam down there is what it is. That's what it was from the factory. Like I said, it is the same color on the inside, so that leads me to very much believe this is an original quarter panel, and this wasn't just done by somebody else. Plus, in here is lead. This is all leaded in here, so therefore, you know, nobody's messed with this. And the second thing, what I was about to go to here, is how poorly bodymen were probably in the late 70s, early 80s. I don't know if this was a homegrown job or an actual, body shop did this, but this I do remember now, and I can see signs of it here. There was body filler all over in here. It was confusing me why this was black, because I knew I didn't replace this quarter panel, and but I didn't remember grinding on it. And now I kind of vaguely remember I did grind on it here just to get this out of here to see if there was rust, which there is no rust in here, surprisingly at all. So I am going to try and fix this if I can. And then down here, this was brazed in over the top of what was here, over the top of some sort of rust, I believe. It is now rusted in here. They kind of brazed this down here solid almost underneath. I don't know exactly. Kind of looks like they went along this pinch weld and just solidly brazed it in, I think, which really sucks for me. And then brazed it across here. That's what makes me think, you know, early or late 70s, early 80s. When I first started doing body work in the 80s, even late 80s, I was taught oxyacetylene brazing in patches. Very quickly after that, it went to MIG welding in stuff, but the guy I learned from was very old school even at that time. So, but I'm glad I learned those techniques. If I ever need to do them, I know I can do them. Going across areas like this can be very difficult because they're big, long, flat areas, and they tend to warp and when you get heat into them. And brazing, you just gotta, it's a hot way of going. MIG welding is a lot less heat. You can keep a lot less heat into it. And I know people say TIG welding is, not from my experience, but I don't have a lot of experience with TIG welding. Now keep in mind, this is going to be more of a customized Mustang, not stock. So quite honestly, I wasn't worried about this area because I plan on doing stuff to this area. I wasn't worried about if everything was perfect as long as it fit on there nice and I could get it decent. What I am worried about is body lines. So therefore, I cut my panel off. It was similar to this panel right here where you have a lip. And then you got your body line and it goes around. Now on this one, I cut that top body line off. Now you'll see this gap here. When I stuck this up on top of the old quarter panel that was here, when I was doing my cutting and stuff, somehow right at the end it slipped a little bit somehow and I cut wrong. So I don't know exactly what happened, but I admit I have a little gap right here I'm going to have to deal with. And the reason behind me doing this, where I cut it down and weld it across here, is body lines. You'll never get as good a body lines as you do from the factory off of the reproduction pieces. They just aren't right, all the body lines. Now, you can do body filler and get it right as good as you can and make everything okay, but the minute that body filler gets, something falls across here or a rock comes along and smacks it, you'll have a little divot. You just do. Anyway, I just don't do body filler as much as I possibly can on corners. I don't do it on corners, and I try not to do it like on edges of doors on this side, especially because this will get knocked into something and a little piece of body filler will chip off. That's just how it is. Sometimes you can't get away with doing that, but if I can, I try and avoid it. Plus, if you try and do the body work in here where you got this crown, and I've seen it a million times, a lot of people, unless you're really aware and really good with body work, if you have the slice up here and you're trying to body work that in, this will end up flat. I've seen so many Mustangs right here that are just flat, and it's because they tried putting a new quarter panel on it, filled this with filler, and didn't bother getting the body right. So that's another thing. So from here down, I can pretty well get this finished down to where my body filler will stop right in here, and I can just have it feather edged all the way down. That is how I was taught as well from the beginning. Was never to weld one directly on a body line, and never in this type of area if you can help it. Also, don't come along the middle right here and do it, because right now this body line keeps the heat from warping this panel. Still got to be careful, but being up here where this is a solid, fairly solid piece that'll help hold the structure. If you try and do it in this area, it will warp a lot more. So this is not welded completely on. It's pretty well tacked. I started kind of doing some welding along here, because quite honestly, I almost stepped on this thing. I think I've talked about this before, or I did step on it. I honestly can't remember anymore. And I got fed up with it being in my way, so I started throwing it on here and just kind of tacked it on. But in the end, I can say that this one, and I wish I knew where it came from, I really don't remember. I'll have to see when I start cutting some stuff off on the inside whether or not there's product information on this anymore. But anyway, as you can see, my body line is really good all the way down. Hopefully you can see that. Pretty much before you do a quarter panel, I'll just talk about this since I'm talking about quarter panels. You want to make sure that this front door is lined up. Now, to get this lined up, quite honestly, my hinges are not great hinges, but I was able to, at the time, line it up with the fender. The fender is no longer attached other than by a couple bolts, but I was able to get it somewhat lined up to the fender. But with these cars anyway, with a lot of cars, if you get the rocker panel down there lined up really flat, which I don't know if you can tell, but this one has a good gap all the way down, then your door can be brought forward and back from there, as long as that's all lined up pretty well. Quite honestly, this gap is really good, surprisingly good for the fact that this quarter panel is not on there. I do need to cut it a little bit loose, and right here, that line matches up front to back, but not, it needs to come out a little bit more. I don't know how to explain it. When I do the quarter panel, I'll show you that. I will be doing more video on this one. Quite honestly, I put this on YouTube didn't even exist when I started putting this on. That's how long it's been since I really did much to this thing, unfortunately. Well, get out there and get your junk working. Thanks for watching Junk Works Garage, where I'm proud to say I'm a jack of all and master of none. You all have a good one.